Welcome into the M&M Discipleship Podcast, where we discuss what it means to be a disciple of Christ. We aim to look for God in our daily lives, be in His Word, and strive to live out the teachings of Jesus. This is Michael Round, and this is my co-host, as always, Dakota Moody. Dakota, how's it going?
It's going well, brother. It's going well. A lot of exciting things in life. Things maybe I'll look to share on the pod at a later date. But there's a lot of good things going on right now. I can say that last week I played in a charity golf tournament with a minister friend of both of mine and Michael somebody we've looked up to since childhood. That's now a peer and colleague, and Andy Brewster. Got to play that, and that was a lot of fun. Got to do that and doing some house shopping currently and all that goes on entail with that. But exciting things on the horizon there. Won't get too much into, but I'll just say,
do well in the golf tournament?
Well is relative. I mean, here's the thing. We finished as four-man scramble. For anybody who knows what that means we're picking the best ball every time for us to use, and we finished even par, which is very good overall. But for a scramble, you might want to be a little bit less than that. But I tell you, it was the first time I got to play at that golf course, and that was an excellent golf course. Smithfield's there in Easley. Normally a private course, but we got that opportunity because of the charity golf tournament. And a lot of us made a lot of good swings. We had a lot of fun, and overall, our score was pretty good. Here's my problem, though. This is a charity golf tournament. People are doing this for charity. And I know the winning team, you're a bunch of liars. All right? I know you are. Okay? Because the winning score was like 17 under. I think it was a 55, which on a par 72, that'd be 17 under, I think. That means you're getting a birdie almost every hole.
Wow.
I mean, or an eagle, I guess, every now and then thrown in there. You guys are liars. I know better than that. Okay. So don't give me that nonsense. All right. I'm watching videos where Bryson DeChambeau's having issues breaking 50 from the red tees with somebody else, and he's a pro. So don't tell me that you got a 55. You people are lying in a charity golf tournament. So anyway.
Do you know any of the people personally who are on that team?
I don't. I just know they're a bunch of liars.
Sounds like a sore loser to me.
Well, listen, I'm not saying, we were never going to win because most of the teams scored in the 60s. We weren't last. We were nowhere near last, actually, because people scored like 6 and 7 strokes higher than us, which that's kind of amazing, considering that, you get 4 tries like that. But
you haven't seen me play golf.
Well, yes. Well, I suppose that's fair, but I'd imagine if you're going to play in a charity golf tournament, you can at least like somewhat swing a club. So I don't know. I mean, maybe. But anyway, at least you have like one ringer on your team or something. But regardless. But these people are liars. All right. I know they are. But anyway, that's my bit of nonsense. Michael, how are you doing this morning?
Doing okay. We got my mom in town, so that's cool. We're spending time with her.
Nice.
Yep. And we're going on a youth retreat with the teens this weekend. I'm really excited about that. The leaves are beautifully colored. And
yes, they are.
So we're going to a beautiful place in Pikeville, Tennessee. Small place off the beaten path. And so it's going to be good.
That sounds nice. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yes, those leaves are changing. I'm looking out my window right now. There's one tree, and it blooms pink in the spring and nice and red in the fall. And right now it is a blazing red, and I enjoy it greatly. This is my favorite time of year by far. Because you get a couple weeks from now, those leaves are going to start stinking on the ground and rotting, and it's not going to be quite as nice. This is the time. This is the perfect time.
I don't know. I like the smell of the leaves. I think it's.
But the leaves decomposing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The whole thing. The whole deal. Fall, winter, like fall going into winter. Like that's. I really like that. I also like this time of year because when I go out in the evenings, I can see deer. And last night in our area, there's a nice buck, and I saw it last night. I mean, it's right outside the ears. I mean, it's beautiful. Big deer walking our dog, and just right out in the backyard. Wish I could just pull down on it.
was about to say, yeah. See, I don't want to see more deer though, because I see too many deer on the side of the road. I don't want to be one of those
Yeah.
people that hits that deer. So
Yes, that's true.
they can be anywhere they want to, just stay out of the road in front of me. That's all
Yeah,
I ask.
that's true. That's true. Mm. So
Well,
Dakota,
anyways, yeah, you yeah.
think about it. Where have you seen God? I know this is your favorite time of year, so that may be where you've seen God.
I mean, yeah, it's really hard not to say that with the leaves changing and everything. But I think um what I'm gonna say is something different because that's kind of obvious. We could talk about the leaves changing and how this is my favorite time of year and things being crisp the last couple weeks. But um, we had a list of houses we wanted to look at last week, and we kind of went through everything and we are like, okay, which of these houses do we really like? Well, there's one house in particular we really liked, and we went and visited, and we were really disappointed because the driveway was incredibly steep, like unnecessarily steep, and it had everything else we desired except you just can't have a driveway that steep. And we were like, man, that's really disappointing. We got to go try to find another house now. We got to expand the search. We got to add different criteria. And I was at a really low point at one point last week because I was like, man, are we going to be able to find something? Is something going to work for us to where we're going to be able to find, the size we want at the price we want in an area that we want, with the kind of school districts we want, things like that. Are we going to be able to find all those things? And I just got kind of hopeless. I was like, does not seem like that's going to be possible. If that house couldn't work, what houses will? We looked at a lot more houses, and then boom, out of nowhere, one house price dropped, comes onto our radar. We look at it. Now we're under contract for it. And
Mm.
what a blessing. And that happened in just a couple days. And I remember that night whenever I was, kind of hopeless, downtrodden, tired from everything that we were doing that day. I prayed and I was feeling very low. And all of a sudden, a few days later, I'm kind of on on a high because so many things worked out and I can see God's hand in all of it. So that's
Mm.
where I've seen God this week.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
It's always good when something that you're stressed about or worried about. I mean, y'all's lease was up before too long, and so you're beginning to be working against the clock, and so I'm sure
Yes.
that was a stressful time. Mm.
Hmm.
And the
Absolutely.
cool thing is, as you're listening to this, whoever you are, I imagine there's instances in your life too where God has worked in that way. And so look for God in those circumstances. Wait and see God, what are you going to do? And in
Absolutely.
a positive way, and be looking for it.
Absolutely.
So for me, it's been a little bit more difficult. We've had one of our members pass away suddenly in a car accident, and it's been very difficult. It's been really hard on our community. She was someone who was very well known and very well loved. She was a servant. She was involved in so many different things to benefit the community and bless other people. A great Christian woman. But in response to that, just seeing the love that the family has been surrounded with, and I guess, recentering of people's focus, life becomes, or the brevity of life becomes clear. And so just seeing that and seeing God work through a tragedy is something that you don't want to see, you don't ask for, because you don't ask for
Mm.
tragedy, but it's beautiful. And so seeing God work through that has been where I've seen God this past week.
Mm. That's and in those moments it's very hard to see the light, but God can work in even the darkest of situations, and I think that's what you've certainly experienced. And inevitably at one point in all of our lives, we see that where
Hmm.
we are in just the darkest of situations, but then we see God's hand at work, and it really changes our focus, changes our mindset. So I appreciate you sharing that, and prayers out to the family who are still having to deal with that. But we do pray in all situations that God's will is done.
Definitely. And he's
Absolutely.
been with us to this point. Thinking
That's
about a
great.
dark time, I just we were talking a minute ago about what we're going to talk about with Samson, and dark for different reasons. Uh, but as you probably have been noticing as we've been going through the book of the Judges, it's just a clear time where people did what was right in their own eyes. And
Yeah.
even a judge, even someone who was trying to lead God's people, went their own way an awful lot. Dakota, what was it, the relationship he invited into his life early that you were talking about that got him in trouble?
Yeah, well, Samson's such a strong person, given, really superpowers in a lot of ways, and he's got these supernatural powers to do just about anything he wants to, and he's got one weakness above all else, and it seems to be women. Um,
Yeah.
and he makes all the mistakes with women he could possibly make, and he begins that by marrying a woman who is from the nation who is plaguing his own nation because he is, of course, a Hebrew and Israelite at this point, and yet he chooses a Philistine wife, which is, of course, the nation that is oppressing Israel the most at this point, the Hebrew people the most. And of all the women you could choose, why would you choose one from your oppressing nation? And this
Hmm.
this begins the cycle. Now, of course, God again uses this opportunity for His will because things kind of go awry after the wedding, and he has to. He then ends up killing a bunch of Philistines and all those sorts of things. But then beyond that, he continues on through his life. Um, Seemingly, even though he is under this Nazarite vow to keep himself pure from, from touching dead bodies and drinking the wine and things like that. Um, he does not seem to have much of an issue being impure with his body when it comes to entertaining women of the night, and that's so as far as I'll go with that comment. Continuing on, before, of course, he makes the most fatal decision in who he is going to be spending his time, his final female companion he's going to spend time with in Delilah. And we've
Hmm.
got a passage we want to read about that. So, Michael, could you please read for us Judges chapter 16, verses 4 through 6, please?
Said after this is when he went and spent time with the prostitute, and the people of Philistia were trying to figure out a way to gain an advantage over him. Anyways,
Yeah.
after this, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, seduce him and see where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him. And we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies and how you might be bound, that one could subdue you. Remember, and maybe this is something you don't know, but Samson had been terrorizing the Philistines, and he'd been killing so many of them, and he single-handedly was doing these deeds. So the Philistines wanted to figure out how they could bind him. And so Delilah comes to him and asks how he could be bound. And he tells her, 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried. And then, sure enough, later that day, he's wrapped in bowstrings, and they try and attack him, but then he overcomes the bowstrings. He snaps the bowstrings, and he breaks free. And then Delilah comes to him again. And what is it going to be this time? And he gives other different things, and finally, he tells Delilah that if you cut his hair, that's where his great strength was. And Dakota, what's kind of the result of this situation?
Well, the result is that he finally tells her that it is his strength. He actually gives her the truth that his strength comes from the hair that is on his head. That if his hair is cut, then he will lose his strength. Then he is bound at that point, and he is taken prisoner by the Philistines. Um, and so it ends up coming to pass that Delilah succeeds. But Samson, what are you doing, man? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
First off, terrible taste of women all the way around. Second off, is it not as clear as day that she is working against you?
yeah, yeah.
Because every time that he tells her his supposed quote unquote weakness, then
Hmm.
he immediately experiences said thing in
Hmm.
his life. It's not really like there's a question
No.
of of who this information is coming from. other than Delilah. So he is completely and totally, willfully ignoring the red
Hmm.
flags
Yes.
from this woman he should not be staying with any further in this relationship. And then at the end, he tells her how he actually can be defeated. And
Well, and these are
then,
such random things.
yes,
You know, the bowstrings, the rope, new ropes, have his hair woven in a certain way with a pin. And it's like,
yeah,
you're exactly right. There's no other way to explain what Delilah is doing other than she is trying to bind you. And then the question is, well, why? Well, how does he not put two and two together? That the Philistines are behind this when they show up whenever he
yeah.
is bound. I mean, like, come on, man. You know, he had super strength, but maybe not super brains.
Oh, apparently he did
Um,
not have much at all. It
yeah.
seems.
So then, after he's bound, his eyes are gouged out, and he is taken in shackles. Next time, we'll talk about the conclusion of Samson's life, but really a mixed judge, a tragic hero, if you will. He's someone who's not morally pure. He's not a righteous man, uh, yet God is using him, and he is going to use him in the future to be a thorn in the side of the Philistines. And I would say too, this will be the last comment I make. I don't know if you have any others on Samson, but just it's a very different time, very physical kingdom time.
Yeah.
Um, spirituality and faith still there. Faith obviously was needed, but the kingdom of God's people was different. It was physical in that time, and so they needed physical heroes versus where we are and how we have someone, Jesus, who ushers in a kingdom that is not of this world. So I think that distinction should be made when we're thinking about people like Samson. Dakota, do you have any other thoughts on this part of Samson's life?
Well, I certainly agree with your point there. The main thing I keep looking at this is choose the people you want to spend your time with wisely, especially people who you are giving your vulnerability to. Um,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
yes, and be cautious about how they're using you, and don't be in toxic relationships.
Well, and two, like something that's talked about a lot today is don't ignore the red flags.
Yes, don't
You
ignore
know,
the red flags, and they are just
learn, figure
yes,
out what some red flags are, and when you're around people, don't
yeah,
ignore them.
yeah. And I mean, and these are some scarlet red flags too.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
exactly.
flew right past him. Well, anyway,
Exactly.
yeah, as we look to go past this, let's talk about what we've been reading recently, Michael. So, what is it that you've been reading this week?
Been continuing through the book Trust by Dr. Henry Cloud, and
Mm,
he said something related to love that I think is good. We talk about love a lot in the church, as we should. And he said, true love has the motive and intent of first doing no harm, but more than that, looking out for the good of the other person or party. It is about being for them as well as for ourselves. That way they can know that we have their back, so carelessness can begin and guardedness can diminish. Oh, gave me a thumbs up. Uh,
mhm. It's a good point.
yeah, exactly. Thank you, Zoom. When thinking about this, we shouldn't try to hurt other people. Going back to Samson and Delilah, this is makes it clear as day that Delilah did not love Samson
Mm,
because she is trying to do him harm, trying to
right.
stab him in the back. But in our relationships, are we trying not to do harm? Are we trying not to hurt other people, not to break their trust? But then are we also trying to be for them and try and rejoice or be happy when they do well? I think that's a true test of whether or not we love somebody is, how do we feel when they do well? And maybe in an area where we aren't doing well. Can
Hmm.
we be happy for other people? Can we
Yeah.
be happy for other people's success? And then, that the part to the end is, in relationships, if you're in a deep loving relationship, deep loving friendship, You let your guard down. It's not work to be around each other. It's not stressful to be around each other. You just enjoy spending time together, and you can
Hmm.
be careless in a good way. You can let your guard down.
Hmm. Well, again, I think that has direct implications to what we just talked about, as you've already mentioned. So yes, yes, we should be able to trust the people we're around in that way, and we hope that we
Definitely,
can. Yeah.
definitely. So, what about you, man?
Continuing on through Peter Scazzaro, talk about the emotionally healthy spirituality. A lot deeper in the book now, and I'm going to go ahead and give a trigger warning on this because he talks about um, how we should mature emotionally,
Hmm.
um, and what it looks like to be an emotionally mature adult. And we talk about, of course, in life we have these phases where we're infants, we're toddlers, we're children, we're adolescents, we're adults. And he kind of uses that in the way for us emotionally because sometimes people are an adult, but they are emotionally an infant or a child.
Hmm.
And this is where it's important that we recognize where we're at and look to get better. And he talks about this directly because he quantifies that emotional infants are people who look for others to take care of them, have great
Hmm.
difficulty entering into the world of others, are driven by
Hmm.
need for instant gratification,
Hmm.
and use others as objects to meet their needs. And that is the emotional infant. Well, then the next step is emotional children, and they are content and happy as long as they receive what they want.
Hmm.
They unravel quickly from stress, disappointments, or trials. They interpret disagreements as personal offenses.
Hmm.
They are easily hurt. They complain, withdraw, manipulate, take revenge, become sarcastic when they don't get their way. And they have great difficulty calmly discussing their needs and wants in a mature, loving way. And that is
Hmm.
children here at this point. Then we get to emotional adolescence. And this is where I'm hoping that maybe you aren't seeing trends within yourself in those stages, but this maybe you start to see some of it. But this is where I think we can start getting this as well. Emotional adolescents tend to often be defensive, are threatened and alarmed by criticism,
Hmm.
keep score of what they give so they can ask for something later in return.
Hmm.
That's a big one, right?
Yep.
Deal
Yep.
with conflict poorly, often blaming, appeasing, going to a third party, pouting, or ignoring the issue entirely,
Hmm.
right? Rather than being able to healthily confront people, because that is what a emotionally healthy adult should be able to do. They become preoccupied with themselves, have great difficulty truly listening to another person's pain, disappointments, or need, and are finally critical and judgmental.
Hmm.
This is the emotional adolescence. And then he talks about the emotional adults, and this is what we want to strive to be, are
Hmm.
able to ask for what they need, want, or prefer clearly, directly, and honestly.
Hmm.
They recognize, manage, and take responsibility for their own thoughts and feelings. That's an interesting one. Not just how others make you feel, but how you feel. You take
Yes.
responsibility for how you feel. Can, when under stress, state their own beliefs and values without becoming adversarial. That can be big.
Hmm. Hmm.
Respect others without having to change them.
Hmm. Oh,
Mm,
yeah, that's a big one.
difficult, right? Oh, yes. Appreciate people for who they are, the good, the bad, the ugly, not for what they give back.
Hmm.
Mm. Accurately assessing their own limits, strengths, and weaknesses, and are able to freely discuss them with others. This is a big part of being self aware. Are deeply in tune with their own emotional world and able to enter into feelings, needs, and concerns of others without losing themselves. And then
Hmm.
finally, have the capacity to resolve conflicts maturely and negotiate solutions that consider the perspectives of others, not just themselves. So, when we think about those lists, those kind of ideas, which camp do we fit mostly into?
Hmm.
And the problem may be is that as I tell you these things, as I give you that list, you may not be a emotionally and I'm not saying that I am either, by the way. I still fit into some of those other categories sometimes. But maybe you hear that list and you are maybe like myself sometimes, you are the spiritual child or spiritual adolescent, and you hear these things as an attack. Well, that's not what this is. That's not what I'm telling you. What I'm
That's
telling
also the
you,
epitome of like child
it's
level
also the
maturity.
epitome. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're hearing these things and you may feel like, well, that's not me or that's an attack on me. Well, then
Mm.
you kind of fit the bill that we just discussed, right? And
Yes,
and I can
yes.
understand. I can understand. Sometimes we should feel a little triggered and attacked in that way, but hopefully instead of looking at the other person, look inwardly.
Mm.
I've told you these things, inspect them, think about them, reflect on them, see if they fit you. If they do, then maybe that's something to consider how you can be better,
Mm.
right?
I
And
think,
a lot of
yeah,
the,
that's
go ahead.
good. That's right.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say, and I think a lot of us struggle with, and it may be in different areas, struggle with, how we react to not getting our way.
Mm.
That's one for me, when I love it, when I get my way. And I love it when people think my idea is great. But then the problem that I really struggle with, maybe not so much uh, not having a decent attitude when I don't get my way, is it can be obvious that I didn't get my way. I'm not as
Mhm.
excited as I should be. And so
Right.
like then it affects other people. And so like I need to be better at being excited when other people get their way.
Mm.
That's a big
Yeah.
one for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Because for me, frankly, it's a little bit of an issue I have. I sometimes have a bit of an issue hiding the emotions on my face. So it's
Exactly.
very
Exactly.
I wear my heart on my sleeve quite a bit. And when I'm excited, you can tell I'm excited, and hopefully everyone's excited with me because we're all excited together. But if something goes wrong, I have a very hard time not showing that
Well,
because
and
it's very clear and apparent.
it's not the, like, you're ready to explode or something like that, but it's just like
Yeah,
it's just it's like throwing water on a fire, and you don't want to throw
correct.
water on other people's fire. They're excited about something.
Yeah,
They're yeah.
yeah. And it's not exactly, I think that's it. It's not like I'm ready to explode. It's not like I'm ready to,
Hmm.
but it's just, yeah, my enthusiasm's gone. My
Hmm.
interest, my intent, it's just gone at that point. And, it's very hard to get that back going at that point. And so we can experience things like that. We can all
Hmm.
experience things like that where we all can mature in some way, shape, or form. But as adults, we need to be able to understand that conflict is a part of life.
Hmm.
It's necessary, and we have to deal with it, right? We should be able to do that in a mature and loving manner.
Hmm.
Okay, first off. Second off, not all criticism is a personal attack,
Right, right.
right? It can be very helpful. You just have to be able to understand how to weed through the good criticism and weed through the bad criticism and not take everything personally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, we have to understand that we're not always going to get our way.
Hmm.
And that sometimes we're going to have to work with other people even when we don't get our way, and we're still going to need to treat them with love in the way that we should. And
Definitely.
those are, I think, are very important things when we talk about how we deal with others and how we can be emotionally healthy, mature adults. Don't keep score. Don't look for how much you're getting your way. That's not the way that we're going to be able to have healthy relationships with one another. So
Mm.
consider those things. Take that as you will. You can not listen to me or Peter Scazzaro, and you can say that we're both crazy and that you're just fine in your life. But I would invite everyone to look inwardly in that way, because if
Definitely.
being emotionally healthy will also help you to be spiritually healthy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, we really appreciate everybody joining us today on the M&M Discipleship Podcast. Until next time, let's look for God, learn from His Word, and strive to live out the teachings of Jesus. Bye for now.